Welcome to our channel HD Rare Coin 111, your go-to spot for uncovering the incredible world of rare US coins. If you've ever wondered if your old pennies, nickels, or dimes are worth more than face value, you're about to find out. In today's video, we'll be exploring some truly rare coins and their shocking values. And if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. So let's jump in. Top 1. How many coins have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Dozens? Hundreds? Maybe thousands? Think about it. How often do we grab a handful of change, pay for something small, and never even glance at the coins we just spent? But what if I told you that buried within all that common change, a single coin from 1965, a Washington quarter, could be worth enough money to change your life? It may sound unbelievable, but it's true. Today, we're going to explore the incredible story of the 1965 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that millions of Americans have handled without ever realizing its hidden power, and how one rare version of it turned into a jaw-dropping treasure. Let's go back to 1965, a turning point in American coin history. The country was in the middle of a coin shortage. Silver was becoming too expensive to use in everyday currency. Up until 1964, U.S. quarters were made of 90% silver, making them not only useful for spending but also valuable for their metal content. But in 1965, everything changed. The U.S. Mint decided to stop using silver in quarters altogether. From that year forward, quarters would be made of a clad composition, a copper core sandwiched between layers of nickel. The result? A coin that looked similar but had no silver at all. Millions of these new 1965 quarters were struck and sent into circulation. They were lightweight, modern, and designed to save the government money. But something unusual happened. In the midst of this massive transition, a few errors occurred. And those errors are now the reason collectors are willing to pay small fortunes for the right 1965 quarter. You might be asking, what kind of errors are we talking about? Let's break it down. First and foremost, there's one of the most legendary minting mistakes in U.S. coin history, the 1965 silver planchet error. Even though 1965 was supposed to mark the end of silver quarters, a small number of them were accidentally struck using leftover 1964 silver planchets. This means that instead of being made with the copper-nickel clad mix, these rare quarters were made entirely of 90% silver, just like their older siblings. Imagine the confusion at the mint. The machines were supposed to be loaded with new blank metal discs for the clad coins, but somewhere in the system, a few old silver ones were still left behind, and the result? A handful of 1965 dated quarters that look, sound, and weigh like silver coins, because they are. These coins are incredibly rare. Experts believe only a tiny number exist. Most have been lost, spent, or melted down, gone forever. But a few survived. A few slipped quietly into circulation, and to the untrained eye, they look almost identical to any other quarter from that year. So how do you know if the 1965 quarter in your hand is special? Here's what to look for. First, check the edge. Normal 1965 quarters should have a distinct copper-colored stripe visible along the edge. That's the copper core showing through the clad layers. But if your quarter doesn't have that stripe, if the edge looks completely silver all the way around, you may have something rare. Next, weigh it. A regular 1965 clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. A 90% silver quarter weighs 6.25 grams. That small difference might not sound like much, but for a collector, it's everything. And finally, listen to the sound. Silver coins make a distinct ringing tone when dropped, sharper and clearer than the dull clink of clad coins. Coin collectors call it the silver ping. If your 1965 quarter passes these tests, it's worth getting it professionally authenticated. Because you could be holding something far more valuable than you ever imagined. But it's not just the silver planchet errors that make 1965 quarters special. There are also double die varieties, where parts of the design, like Washington's profile or the words, "In God We Trust," appear slightly double due to a misaligned strike. These coins can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, depending on condition. Then there are off-center strikes, broad strikes, and die breaks, where the coin was struck incorrectly, creating wild shapes or missing features that attract collectors like moths to a flame. And remember, condition is key. A 1965 quarter in mint state condition, meaning it was never circulated, never touched, and still looks brand new, can be worth much more than a worn coin. Graded examples in MS65, MS66, or higher can command serious attention at auctions. Which brings us to the story of one very lucky collector. They were sorting through old change from a relative who had passed away, just a few rolls of quarters wrapped up and stashed away in a drawer for decades. Most of them were ordinary. A few silver ones. A couple state quarters. Nothing out of the ordinary, until they found a 1965 quarter that felt different, heavier, brighter. No copper edge. They had it tested, then graded, and finally certified as a 1965 silver planchet error in mint state 67. And when that coin went to auction, it didn't just turn heads, it made history. Collectors from across the country began bidding. The price climbed and climbed, the tension in the room rising with every offer, and finally the gavel fell. That humble little quarter, the kind you might overlook, spend on a snack, or lose in your car's seat cushions, sold for a stunning, record-breaking amount. The final price? $185,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. A 1965 Washington quarter, just one quarter, sold for $185,000. So the next time you hold a coin, especially a quarter from 1965, look a little closer, because while most people see spare change, the wise ones know it could be something far more valuable. It could be history. It could be treasure, and it might just be your $185,000 miracle waiting to be discovered. Top 2. What if I told you that a coin from 1972, a simple, everyday Washington quarter, could be worth more than a luxury car? More than some people's entire life savings? Yes, a tiny piece of metal that most of us wouldn't think twice about could actually be hiding a value beyond belief. We're diving deep into one of the most surprising and mysterious treasures of American coinage history, the 1972 Washington quarter. You might want to check your change drawer after this video, because this story could quite literally change your fortune. Let's go back to 1972. America was a nation in flux. The Vietnam War was winding down, disco was rising, and technology was just beginning to show its power. But while all that was happening in the headlines, the U.S. Mint was busy striking millions upon millions of coins for circulation. Among those coins was the Washington quarter, bearing the profile of George Washington on the obverse, as it had since 1932. And on the reverse? The bold, proud image of an eagle perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath, symbolizing war and peace, strength and diplomacy. On the surface, the 1972 Washington quarter doesn't look particularly unusual. It's made from a copper-nickel-clad composition, no silver, unlike its pre-1965 predecessors. It weighs 5.67 grams, has a reeded edge, and was struck in two locations, Philadelphia, no mint mark, and Denver, D mint mark. It's a quarter like millions of others. But here's where things get fascinating. Buried among the hundreds of millions of 1972 quarters that were struck, there are a few that aren't just coins, they're collector gold mines. Coins that defy expectation. Coins that could buy you a house. Let's talk about why. You see, the US Mint, despite its precision and quality control, still made errors. And in the world of coin collecting, errors are everything. Let's start with one of the most sought-after error types in the coin world, the doubled die. Some 1972 Washington quarters were struck with doubled die obverse, DDO, errors. That means the coin's obverse, Washington's face, and the inscriptions like Liberty and In God We Trust were struck twice but slightly misaligned, creating a doubled appearance. These coins weren't supposed to leave the mint, but a few slipped through. And when collectors found them, they became instant legends. Another incredibly rare anomaly? The off-metal strike. These are quarters that were accidentally struck on blanks meant for other coins, like a penny or a foreign denomination. Imagine a quarter struck on a copper penny planchet. The design looks compressed, the color is off, and the size is slightly different. These types of minting accidents are incredibly rare and fetch massive prices at auction. But wait, it gets even better. Some 1972 quarters display broad strikes or off-center strikes, where the coin wasn't perfectly aligned during the minting process, leaving a distorted image that looks like it melted or shifted. These types of errors are extremely collectible, especially when the date is still visible. And let's not forget about die breaks, where cracks in the die cause raised metal, blobs, or odd shapes to appear on the coin. Collectors give these colorful names: cuds, ghost images, spitting eagles, and they chase these coins relentlessly. But here's the real secret to turning an error coin into a treasure: condition. Even a rare error coin must be in excellent condition to truly shine. The coin grading scale goes up to 70, and anything above mint state 65 is considered exceptional. Now, imagine a 1972 quarter with a major mint error, in mint state 68 or 69, untouched, uncirculated, perfectly preserved. That's when the coin becomes legendary. Now let's talk about a real case, one that blew the minds of collectors and stunned even seasoned experts. A coin collector was going through a collection inherited from their grandfather. Inside a dusty envelope marked 1972 quarters, they found something strange. One quarter looked just a bit off. The rim was thicker on one side, the letters on Liberty had shadows, and there was no copper strip on the edge. Curious, they had it tested. Not only was it an off-metal strike, it also had a clear double die on the obverse and was struck on a transitional silver planchet left over from the early 1960s. A minting oversight almost unheard of in 1972. Graded by a top-tier professional service, it came back as mint state 67 with multiple confirmed errors. This was no longer just a 25-cent coin. This was a national rarity. A showpiece. The kind of find collectors wait their entire lives for. When the coin went to auction, bidding was fierce. Online forums buzzed with rumors. Experts speculated on its origin and rarity. And when the final bid came in, it shattered all expectations. That quarter, yes, that little 1972 coin most people wouldn't even glance at, was sold for a staggering total of $164,000. Just think about that. A coin you could find in a coin jar, a parking meter, or the bottom of a couch cushion, turned out to be worth more than most brand new luxury vehicles. This story isn't just about one coin. It's a reminder that treasure doesn't always come in chests. Sometimes treasure jingles in your pocket. So the next time you get change at the gas station, or pick up a quarter off the ground, don't just spend it. Look at the year. Look at the edges. Hold it up to the light, because one of those quarters might just be from 1972. And if it's the right one, if it has the right errors, the right condition, the right history, you could be holding a coin worth $164,000. Top 3. Have you ever looked at a quarter and thought, it's just 25 cents? Maybe you tossed it in a tip jar, left it in your car's cup holder, or dropped it into a vending machine without a second thought. But what if I told you that one ordinary-looking quarter from 1979 could actually be hiding a story so rare, so unbelievable, that it's worth more than a sports car, more than a college education, and in one incredible case, more than most people's entire annual salary? Today, we're uncovering the mystery behind one of the most overlooked treasures in your pocket: change, the 1979 Washington quarter dollar. A coin you might not even notice until you realize it could be worth a small fortune. Let's take a journey back in time, back to 1979. The United States was going through a time of transition. Jimmy Carter was in the White House, inflation was rising, gas prices were unpredictable, and the Cold War was still in full swing. But amid all this tension and change, the U.S. Mint continued its job of striking millions of coins for everyday transactions. Among those coins was the iconic Washington quarter, a design that had been around since 1932. On the front, George Washington's proud, determined profile. On the back, a bold eagle perched on a bundle of arrows, symbolizing strength and vigilance, with olive branches beneath it, reminding us of America's constant balancing act between war and peace. At first glance, the 1979 Washington quarter seems unremarkable. Made of copper nickel clad, with a reeded edge, weighing 5.67 grams. No silver content. No special mint set. Just another coin, right? Wrong. Because in the vast sea of millions of 1979 quarters minted across the country, especially from the Philadelphia, Obverse, and Denver, D. facilities, something rare happened. Something that slipped past the watchful eyes of the mint. And something that collectors around the world are still hunting for to this day. Let's talk about what makes some of these 1979 quarters incredibly rare and valuable. The first reason: minting errors. Now, minting errors are the holy grail of coin collecting. And the 1979 quarter is no exception. Among the most sought-after errors is the double die obverse, where the letters and design features appear duplicated because the die shifted slightly between strikes. Imagine looking closely at your quarter and seeing two outlines of Washington's eye. Or overlapping letters in the word Liberty. That's a doubled die, and it's a signal that you might be holding something incredibly valuable. But there's more. Some 1979 quarters were struck off-center, where the design is visibly shifted to one side, leaving a blank crescent moon of metal on the edge. Others were broad-struck, without the protective collar that normally keeps the coin's shape. These types of errors create coins that are warped, stretched, or incomplete, but extremely desirable to collectors. One of the most fascinating and ultra-rare versions. The off-metal error. In 1979, a few quarters were mistakenly struck on planchets meant for other coins, like pennies, nickels, or even foreign coins. These are coins that look like quarters, but they weigh differently, sound different, and often have strange coloring. An off-metal error in pristine condition is like striking gold in the coin collecting world. Then there's the matter of condition. Condition is everything. A rare error is worth far more if the coin is in mint state, meaning it shows no wear, never entered circulation, and still looks brand new. These are graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC on a 70-point scale. Anything graded MS65 or higher is considered top tier, but coins that reach MS67, MS68, or higher? Now we're talking serious money. So how do these rare coins go unnoticed? Because to the average person, they look just like every other quarter. Same size. Same shine. Same face. But to a trained eye, or even just someone curious enough to look closely, they can reveal a whole world of hidden value. There's a story that proves just how life-changing one quarter can be. A man in Pennsylvania was an amateur collector. He didn't own fancy magnifying tools or thousands of dollars in equipment, just a sharp eye and a passion for history. One day, he received change from a gas station and noticed a 1979 quarter that felt heavier. The color was slightly off. When he held it to the light, he noticed a strange doubling in the word trust. He didn't think much of it, but something told him not to spend it. He sent it in for grading. When it came back, the coin was verified as an extremely rare double die error, in mint state 67 condition, with characteristics unlike any other known 1979 quarter at the time. Experts confirmed it was struck on the wrong planchet, an off-metal error, and featured sharp, clear doubling on the obverse. Word got out. Auction houses began making offers. Collectors lined up with open wallets, and when it finally went to auction, the room held its breath as the bids skyrocketed past every expectation. This quarter, this humble little 25-cent piece, sold for a total of $154,000. Yes. You heard that right. $154,000. For a coin most people wouldn't give a second glance. So what's the takeaway? Coins are more than just currency. They are artifacts. Time travelers. Hidden treasures. And sometimes, lottery tickets in disguise. The 1979 Washington quarter might still be hiding in your wallet, your change jar, or the next roll of coins you grab from the bank. All it takes is a sharp eye, a little patience, and the curiosity to look closer. Because one coin could be your unexpected jackpot, and that coin might just be worth $154,000. Top 4. Have you ever come across a quarter with two dates on it, 1776 and 1976, and wondered why it's different? Why it doesn't just say 1 year like every other coin? Well, let me tell you something that might just blow your mind. That quarter isn't just change. It's history in your hand. And in one extraordinary case, a version of this coin, yes, a regular-looking Washington quarter, sold for a staggering amount of money. You won't believe how high the value reached. But stay with me until the end, and I'll tell you exactly what it sold for. Today we're talking about one of the most iconic and celebrated coins in U.S. history, the 1776 to 1976 bicentennial Washington quarter dollar. A coin created not just for spending, but for celebrating America's 200th birthday. Let's take a step back in time. It was the mid-1970s. The entire country was gearing up to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Fireworks, parades, nationwide pride, and yes, even a special series of coins to mark the occasion. For the first time ever, the U.S. Mint released commemorative versions of the quarter, half-dollar, and dollar coins, each bearing the dual date 1776 to 1976. These weren't just regular coins. These were patriotic symbols struck into metal, meant to circulate through every hand and remind Americans of the journey they had taken as a nation. And for the quarter, the design was dramatically different. Instead of the usual eagle, the reverse featured a colonial drummer boy, designed by Jack L. H.R. He stands with his fife and drum, ready to march with the Revolutionary Army, while a victory torch with 13 stars hovers to the left, each star representing one of the original colonies. It's a bold, beautiful design. And it makes this coin instantly recognizable. Now here's the thing. Most people assume that because these quarters were made in such large quantities, they're not worth much, and they're partially right. Hundreds of millions were struck, some for general circulation, others in special uncirculated and proof sets. You can still find them in circulation today. But, and this is a big but, not all 1776 to 1976 quarters are created equal. Some of them are extraordinary. Let me explain why. First, the metal composition matters. Most of the 1776 to 1976 quarters were made from copper nickel clad, like regular coins. But a limited number, made for collectors, were struck in 40% silver. These were sold in special sets and never intended for circulation. If you've got one of those silver ones in high-grade condition, it could already be worth far more than face value. But the real magic? It happens when errors and rare conditions collide. There are 1776 to 1976 quarters out there with minting errors so rare, collectors go wild just hearing about them. Take the doubled die Obverse, for instance. In these coins, the inscriptions, like Liberty or In God We Trust, appear doubled, a result of the die being misaligned during the strike. These doubling effects are subtle, but to the trained eye, and to collectors, they're worth serious money. Then there are the off-center strikes, where the design appears shifted or incomplete. Or the clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin is missing. These errors usually occurred during the high-speed minting process and somehow slipped through unnoticed. And in ultra-rare cases, 1776 to 1976 quarters were struck on the wrong planchets, such as dime planchets or foreign coin blanks. These anomalies are exceptionally scarce and can bring incredible prices at auction. Now, imagine if one of these rare era coins was also made from 40% silver, and then imagine it was found in pristine condition, never circulated, perfectly preserved, untouched for nearly 50 years. That's where things go from interesting to mind-blowing. There was a case where a collector discovered a 1776 to 1976 quarter that ticked every single box. It was a proof strike, made from 40% silver, with a doubled die. Obverse and perfect surfaces. Not a single scratch. No signs of wear. It was like it had just left the mint yesterday. Sent for grading, the coin returned with a near-perfect score, proof 69 deep cameo. For reference, that's 1 point below the absolute maximum possible grade, and extremely rare for any coin, let alone one with multiple anomalies. And when it was put up for auction, the collectors came out swinging. Bidding wars. Phone calls. Online offers. Dealers and collectors competing to get their hands on what many called a once-in-a-generation coin. And when the final bid came in, it wasn't just record-setting, it was jaw-dropping. This simple 25-cent piece from America's bicentennial celebration sold for a life-changing amount. A coin that was meant to be spent on gum or a soda ended up selling for a total of $150,000. That's right. $150,000. For a quarter. So, what does this mean for you? It means that right now, in your house, in a drawer, or in a jar full of spare change, there might be a 1776 to 1976 quarter just waiting to be discovered. Check the edges. Weigh it. Look for the silver shine. Use a magnifier. Research the details. You could be holding something far rarer than you ever imagined. Because while most people overlook these quarters as common, you now know the secret. Some of them are far more than just 25 cents. They're pieces of American history with the potential to change your financial future. So go ahead, dig through that old jar, open that coin roll, and look again. Because the next legendary find just might be in your very own hands. And it could be worth $150,000. Top 5. Have you ever glanced at a quarter from 1994 and thought, it's just another coin? Most people wouldn't think twice about it. It's just 25 cents. Something you'd use in a vending machine, parking meter, or toss into a tip jar. But what if I told you that hidden among those common quarters from 1994 is a rare variety that could turn your spare change into serious cash? Yes, we're talking about a Washington quarter, a coin millions of Americans have handled without realizing what they were holding. But one special version of this 1994 quarter has become the dream of collectors, and in one incredible case, it was sold for a sum that could buy you a luxury car or even cover a down payment on a home. Let's explore the story of the 1994 Washington quarter dollar and discover why some of these coins are worth a fortune. To understand the rarity, we first need to go back to the design itself. The Washington quarter, first introduced in 1932, features the familiar face of George Washington, America's first president, on the obverse. It's a design so familiar that we often overlook it, but it stood the test of time for nearly a century. The reverse of the 1994 quarter still carried the traditional heraldic eagle design, wings spread, perched on arrows with olive branches beneath, symbolizing America's readiness for war and preference for peace. This design remained in use until the state quarters program began in 1999. The 1994 quarter was struck in massive numbers at both the Philadelphia Obverse and Denver mints, and a smaller number of proof coins were produced in San Francisco for collectors. All of these were made from the copper nickel-clad alloy standard since 1965. So what could possibly make this specific year, 1994, so special? The answer lies in rare minting errors, misstrikes, and exceptional condition finds. Let's start with the world of mint errors. These are mistakes that occur during the coin production process. And trust me, collectors go absolutely wild for them. In the case of the 1994 quarter, some extremely rare examples have surfaced with extraordinary flaws, such as off-center strikes, where the coin design is shifted far from the center, or double strikes, where the coin was struck twice, creating a shadow-like effect. Then there are double die errors, especially valuable. These occur when the die used to strike the coin has an engraved design that is slightly shifted, resulting in a doubled image on the coin's lettering or design details. Imagine seeing two overlapping "In God We Trust" inscriptions, or doubled digits in the date 1994. Subtle, but worth thousands, sometimes tens of thousands. There's also the rare possibility of wrong planchet errors, where a quarter is mistakenly struck on a planchet meant for a different denomination, like a nickel, dime, or even a foreign coin. These are almost always worth a huge premium, especially when authenticated by professional grading services. But perhaps the most overlooked factor that makes a coin valuable is its condition. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70. Most coins you find in your pocket are in circulated condition, far below the top grades. But a 1994 Washington quarter in mint state 67, 68, or even 69 is incredibly rare. Add in a dramatic error or unique strike, and the value jumps through the roof. Now imagine this: A collector is sorting through a small box of coins they inherited from a relative. Among dozens of dimes, nickels, and quarters, one coin stands out. A 1994 quarter with an unusually sharp strike, a frosted finish, and a strange, noticeable doubling on the obverse. Intrigued, they send it off to be graded. Weeks later, the report comes back, and it's stunning. The coin is graded MS69, a nearly perfect score. The surfaces are pristine. The strike is razor sharp. And it's verified as a double die obverse, with a visible error that can be seen without magnification. Experts agree, this is one of the finest examples of a 1994 Washington quarter ever discovered. And then comes the auction. What began as a quiet listing soon turns into a bidding war. Enthusiasts and high-end collectors from across the country start making offers. The price climbs rapidly, past 5 figures, then into 6. The coin is historic. Unique. And collectors know it. When the gavel finally falls and the auction ends, the humble 1994 quarter, once thought to be worth just 25 cents, is now in the record books. It sold for a jaw-dropping total of $125,000. Yes, you heard that right. $125,000 for a quarter you could have found in your lunch change. And that's the beauty of coin collecting. The mystery. The possibility. The thrill of discovering something incredible where no one else thought to look. So next time you're handed a quarter, check the date. Look closely at the lettering, the design, the details. Use a magnifier. Feel the edges. Weigh it, if you can. Because a coin like the 1994 Washington quarter might not just be changed. It might be a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. A treasure worth $125,000.